Let's get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time. And take a listen to this answer.
Say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walz brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or fix a truck.
Tim Walz thought he could coast by on flashy speeches and perfectly timed photo ops, but he was dead wrong. Megyn, Kelly, and Charlie Kirk didn't show up to play nice. They came armed with verbal dynamite. And what followed? A complete takedown right before America's eyes. They didn't just call him out, they crushed him live on national television. From the disaster in education to the explosion in crime rates, from empty promises to sugar-coated lies, nothing escaped their fire. They peeled back every polished layer and revealed a governor obsessed with good press instead of good policy. The illusion shattered, and the cold, hard truth stole the spotlight.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools.
I'll tell you one thing. The most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy, well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not able to stand up for themselves.
Megyn, Kelly, and Charlie Kirk didn't wait for permission. They bulldozed right through the nonsense with the cameras rolling, no tiptoeing, no soft jabs. They confronted phony leadership head-on, with every word landing like a direct hit. And when Tim Walz stepped into the spotlight, they unleashed a truth bomb so powerful it tore his carefully crafted image to pieces. This wasn't about political games. It was about holding failure accountable in full view of the public, because when incompetence gets that loud, it demands a microphone. And they handed it one on fire.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This is a sacred trust. In the spring of 2005, Walz walked away from that sacred trust, abandoning his post when he learned of an upcoming Iraq deployment. This is cynical Pubula saying this. He is a coward. According to this Twitter feed, he is a quitter. And every veteran I've talked to thinks that Walz is close to betraying the country by doing it.
Megyn Kelly didn't need more than a single glance at Tim Walz's polished persona to know something was off. He wore the man of the people act, like a costume pulled out of a campaign closet, pretending to connect with real struggles while soaking in elite praise. But Megyn's no rookie. She spent years dismantling fake narratives and plastic politicians. She saw through the act instantly. Walz didn't radiate sincerity. He oozed consultant-tested catchphrases and recycled empathy designed to impress cameras, not citizens.
What Walz did is the moral equivalent of a mother dropping off her 5 preteen children at an orphanage in the dead of night so that she could run for Congress. Yes, it is that bad. This was more than just abandoning troops. It also reflects a major personal deficit in his character and makeup. By the way, this is written by a veteran.
Megyn didn't hesitate. She ripped right through Walz's polished veneer and exposed the chaos hiding underneath. He promised unity and transparency, but delivered confusion and fear. She called out his routine of dodging blame like a child blaming the wind for breaking a window. His entire leadership strategy? Step 1. Toss out a vague promise. Step 2, disappear when reality hits. Step 3, hold a press conference that says absolutely nothing. And Charlie Kirk? He went straight for Walz's economic record and scorched it. He exposed how Walz chased businesses out of Minnesota like they were intruders. Taxes skyrocketed, regulations exploded, and economic growth? It dragged like a tractor in a mud pit. Charlie didn't hold back. He said Walz acted like growth meant hiring more bureaucrats and punishing anyone who actually created jobs. Then the scope widened, and it only got uglier. Megyn shredded Walz's pandemic response. She painted him as a wannabe scientist peddling fear over facts. Lockdowns slammed down hard, but always with a political timer. Small businesses were crushed while big corporations skipped through untouched. Schools were closed, but bars stayed open. Megyn made it clear, this wasn't science, it was politics in a lab coat.
And the idea that you said that you were in war,
Yeah.
did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my...
Charlie didn't just make claims, he brought receipts. He showed how Walz waved around data like a trophy one week, then buried it the next if it didn't fit the narrative. Hospital numbers were inflated, predictions missed the mark, and every decision reeked of headline chasing, not public safety. Charlie nailed it. This was panic theater pretending to be leadership. When Minnesota needed a steady hand, Walz offered stage lights and fear. But the real gut punch came when Megyn exposed the performance art behind his leadership. Walz never missed a photo op. He posed at protests, lined up for vaccines, and struck dramatic poses like a Netflix hero called the burdened leader. But when the real crisis came, cities burning, schools crumbling, businesses collapsing, he disappeared like a ghost in a PR fog. No solutions, no backbone, just silence wrapped in dramatic lighting. Charlie wasn't finished. He charged into the chaos of the George Floyd riots. He broke down exactly how Walz failed. Cities were falling apart, police were overwhelmed, and Walz? He waited. Too long. By the time the National Guard arrived, the damage was irreversible. Charlie said it plain. Walz didn't lead during crisis, he watched the fire spread.
Tim Walz then lied about it to run for Congress and acted as if he was on the front lines. And people in Walz's battalion died. People under his supervision died. If Master Sergeant retired Walz could not be trusted to fulfill his duties he had to his soldiers, his unit, and his nation in 2005, how can he be trusted to be vice president in 2025?
Charlie laughed at the excuse that Walz was simply waiting for more information. He said it looked more like Walz was stalling, buying time, praying someone else would step in, clean up the mess, and hand him the credit later. The hesitation, the silence, the retreat. It painted the picture of a man more terrified of bad headlines than of cities falling apart. Then Megyn zeroed in on his education record, and she did not hold back. She torched Walz for overseeing one of the sharpest academic declines in Minnesota's history. A former teacher now running a system into the ground. Reading scores collapsed, math scores tanked, and instead of stepping up, Walz doubled down on failed virtual learning plans, while real answers were nowhere in sight. Then came the culture war, and Megyn came in swinging. She accused Walz of trying to dance on both sides of every issue, pleasing no one while confusing everyone. He didn't take a stand. He blended into the background like wallpaper. Megyn slammed him for hiding radical policies behind his soft tone and warm accent. Moderation, she said, was just a disguise for quiet extremism.
What kind of bullshit is that? No, you don't, sir. We don't lie about military service we didn't actually perform, like going to war. We don't steal valor by saying that we had a higher rank in the National Guard than we did. We don't run around saying we served in operating enduring freedom in Afghanistan when we didn't. We don't stand and watch somebody say that we were in combat in Iraq when we weren't.
Charlie came in like a wrecking ball, this time targeting Walz's blind loyalty to party politics. He accused Walz of being nothing more than a puppet. Donors whispered, the party gave orders, and Walz followed without question. Mask the kids? Done. Shut down churches but keep liquor stores open? No problem. Pretend crime isn't skyrocketing? He nodded like a bobblehead in a wind tunnel. Charlie didn't sugarcoat it. Walz wasn't governing. He was just managing a brand in winter boots. Then Megyn brought the hammer down on public safety. She said under Walz, police weren't just defunded, they were humiliated and pushed aside. Crime soared, officer morale shattered, and neighborhoods were left begging for help while Walz looked the other way. Charlie backed her up with cold, brutal numbers, cop resignations through the roof, community fear rising, and no leadership in sight. He connected the dots. Soft on crime policies led directly to chaos in the streets. The cities Walz claimed to serve, they were drowning, and he was the one holding the hose. Together, Megyn and Charlie didn't just criticize, they demolished the entire narrative. They didn't yell, they didn't rage, they delivered every word like a hammer strike, measured, sharp, and devastating.
Podcast attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy. Well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I every single day am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men.
They sliced through the spin like a hot knife through butter. Not a single talking point survived their onslaught. Every excuse crumbled, every slogan withered, and all that remained was the grim truth. Tim Walz talked tough, acted timid, and governed like he needed permission to lead, but Megyn wasn't stopping there. She made it loud and clear. This wasn't a one-night takedown. She was just getting started. Any leader faking competence while the people suffer? She's coming for them too. Charlie stood his ground just as fiercely. He vowed to keep exposing every twisted number, every contradictory soundbite, and every attempt Walz made to dress up failure as success. No matter how much Walz smiled at a press conference, his act had been exposed. The mask was gone, and what stared back wasn't leadership, it was weakness. Then came the climate agenda, and Megyn lit it up. She called it out as pure showbiz wrapped in eco-slogans. Walz talked like a spokesperson for a solar panel commercial. But back home, roads were collapsing, power outages were routine, families froze in winter because of poor planning and mismanaged resources. Megyn didn't hold back. She said it wasn't progress, it was lipstick smeared all over a blackout.
Yourself from that clarification. And then here's two pieces of this that are really... I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves. And I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak like we do. I speak like regular people.
Charlie zoomed in on the state budget like a frustrated teacher grading a failing test, and the numbers didn't lie. Minnesota was flooded with tax dollars, but real results? Nowhere to be found. He slammed Walz for pulling off what he called reverse alchemy, turning public funds into potholes and paperwork. Every new tax hike was paraded as progress, while the state's problems just kept getting worse. Charlie mocked the glossy brochures and picture-perfect press events that tried to cover up the collapse. Then Megyn shifted focus to healthcare. And she didn't pull punches. Walz had made huge promises about reform, but delivered nothing but a bureaucratic nightmare. Emergency room waits ballooned, rural hospitals teetered on the brink, and while patients cried for help, committees multiplied like rabbits. each one doing less than the last. Megyn laid it out with deadly clarity. This wasn't reform, it was red tape wrapped in a lab coat.
The fallout continues for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, I'm a knucklehead, was he got confronted with his latest lie that's been unearthed. There's a long list of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know, whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government.
Megyn didn't sugarcoat it. She said Walz's healthcare plan was the only one in America that made people feel worse just watching it fall apart. Doctors were burned out, patients stuck in endless limbo, and the whole system spun in circles like a hamster wheel of misery. This wasn't healthcare, it was performance art dressed as policy. Then Charlie locked in on immigration, and Walz's favorite tactic: gentle words with zero action. Every position came coded in soft language but lacked any backbone. Sanctuary city slogans, symbolic gestures, all while real communities were left to pick up the pieces. Charlie ripped into the fantasy politics sold in St. Paul, while towns across Minnesota struggled under the weight of stretched resources and silence from the top. He painted a brutal picture. While everyday families fought to stay afloat, Walz was busy building a glittery bridge of promises that led nowhere but confusion and collapse.
Again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This took chutzpah. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record. He keeps doing this. Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't, actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel.
Then Megyn turned the spotlight on Walz's media game and tore it to shreds. She exposed the cozy interviews, the scripted fluff, and his constant ducking of real questions unless the cameras were soft and the questions rehearsed. Megyn had dealt with plenty of polished politicians, but Walz took it to another level. She mocked his idea of transparency, saying it looked more like this: let reporters watch him read a statement ghostwritten by 6 people he's never met. Charlie jumped in with a smirk and sealed the deal. He said Walz treated media like a last-minute school project. He'd show up, read the last paragraph, take credit, and vanish, while everyone else did the real work. Meanwhile, the damage piled up. Teachers exhausted, small business owners giving up, and Minnesotans drowning in silence and spin.
Disgusting, repulsive, and reprehensible examples of abandoning one's unit, of turning back on country and instead for own personal comfort and safety that we have ever seen in politics. And it's far worse than I even think people are describing it. It is worse than stolen valor. It is abandoning your fellow soldier.
Parents started pulling their kids out of public schools in droves. And what did Walz do? He threw a round table with political insiders and slapped the word progress on it like a cheap sticker. Megyn delivered the final blow with chilling precision. She called out the rot of complacency that had taken hold under Walz's watch. Failure wasn't fixed, it was rebranded. Crisis after crisis came and went, each followed by a polished press release, blaming everything but the leadership responsible. She didn't mince words. This had gone far beyond politics. Megyn said it plainly. This was about a governor who vanished when his people needed him most. Charlie backed her up without blinking. Because in the end, this wasn't about parties, it was about performance. And under Tim Walz, results were buried beneath a mountain of excuses. Optimism got replaced with spin, and leadership, it was smothered beneath layers of scripted sympathy and empty applause.